Dr. Elara Voss had not slept in 7 days. Or rather, she had not stopped sleeping. Her nights were a fractured kaleidoscope of realms where time bled like watercolor, cities built of humming light, forests that whispered in a language her bones recognized, and always, always, the inverted labyrinth. Its obsidian walls pulsed in her peripheral vision, even now, as she stared at the flickering EEG monitor in her university lab. The machine's jagged lines mapped her brainwaves, like seismic cracks, but they could not explain the symbol carved into her dreams, a spiraling glyph that matched no known culture, no human tongue. Yet there it was, inked into the margins of her grandfather's journal, buried in his attic 3 lifetimes ago. "They harvest us in the liminal hours," he'd scrawled in shaky Cyrillic. "The gate is not closed, only forgotten." Sleep, modern science insisted, was a biological subroutine, a defragmenting of synapses, a janitorial sweep for the mind. But Elara's research whispered heresies. Her subjects, hooked to wires and IV drips in the lab's sterile underbelly, reported, uncanny overlaps in their dreamscapes. The same shadowed figure offering a key. The same drowned cathedral sinking into a starless sea. One volunteer, a chain-smoking cab driver named Felix, awoke screaming about the architects pruning his memories like overgrown vines. He vanished the next day, leaving behind a half-eaten sandwich and a resignation note smudged with something dark and iridescent. The town of Holloway, with its fog-cloaked streets and purring street lamps, had always been a place of uneasy quiet. Locals traded folk tales of the Somnuri. Nomadic mystics said to walk the bone roads of sleep, trading secrets with entities that predated cities. Elara scoffed, until she found the labyrinth's twin etched into the lab's basement wall, hidden behind a filing cabinet. Carbon dating placed it at 3,000 years old. The university threatened to shut her down. Funding evaporated like morning dew. But the dreams sharpened, relentless. Last night, she'd stood in the labyrinth's center, her fingers brushing a door of liquid shadow. A voice, honeyed and hollow, slithered through her skull. "You've been knocking for so long, little key. Aren't you tired?" When the first body washed ashore at dawn, a John Doe with pupils like shattered glass, and the labyrinth burned into his palms, Elara knew the door was opening, with or without her. Chapter 2. First time Elara's consciousness tore free of her body, she mistook it for cardiac arrest. One moment, she was slumped over her desk, the bitter tang of stale coffee on her tongue. The next, she floated above her own limp form, wires snaking from her temples like mechanized Medusa curls. Lucid sleep. The term felt laughably inadequate. This was no dream. This was dissection. Her senses sharpened to a razor's edge. She could taste the lithium-ion hum of the lab's servers, smell the ozone crackle of her own dormant neurons. And then she saw it. The journal. Her grandfather's journal, glowing faintly in the desk drawer. Not the physical copy she'd pored over for years, but a specter of it. Its pages bleeding fresh ink. "The gatekeepers never left," read a newly visible entry. "They simply learned to hide in the clockwork between heartbeats." Sleep paralysis, her colleagues argued. Hypnagogic hallucinations. But how to explain the footage from Lab 3B? The security tape showed Elara's body motionless at 3:33 a.m., while the infrared camera captured a heat signature, a rippling, humanoid shape, poring over the journal's digital scans on her computer. The next morning, she found the files, altered, clinical diagrams of the brainstem overwritten with arcane schematics of a resonance engine, a device designed to amplify collective REM states. According to the notes, it had been tested in 1944 on soldiers, volunteers who'd described merging into a single dreaming mind before their cerebral cortices liquefied. 3 nights later, the labyrinth summoned her. Not in sleep, but in the liminal gasp between elevator floors. The doors slid open onto a derelict subway platform, air thick with the reek of rust and bergamot. There, beneath a flickering "Mind the Gap" sign, stood the woman. Her face shifted like smoke. Young, old, alive, dead. But her eyes remained fixed. Twin supernovas burning through a film of static. "You're asking the wrong questions, Doctor," she said, voice layered with a chorus of strangers. "Sleep isn't a state. It's a place. And you've been ringing the dinner bell." She pressed a key into Elara's palm, its teeth jagged like broken code. "They're coming. Faster now. You'll want to run." When Elara blinked, she was back in the elevator, her fist clenched around cold metal. The key's bow was etched with the labyrinth, the same one glowing on her office wall when she returned, wet and gleaming as if carved seconds ago. The Nocturnal Sea was not a metaphor. Elara learned this the night her borrowed key seared through the labyrinth's shadow door, plunging her into a dimension where physics was a forgotten dialect. Tier 1 greeted her like a funhouse mirror, familiar yet warped. Streets from her childhood yawned into Escher-esque spirals. Her mother's face melted into a dozen strangers mid-sentence. These were the surface dreams, the mind's self-obsessed doodles, personal traumas recycled as paranoid theater. But even here, the rules curdled. A homeless man recited her credit card number. A storm cloud rained teeth. And always, the faint pull downward, as if the realm itself were a sinking ship. Tier 2 drowned her. The shared subconscious was a roiling cathedral of human hunger. Centuries of grief, lust, and wonder pooled into a single churning ether. She drifted through collective hallucinations, Napoleonic soldiers sobbing into iPhones, Babylonian priests scrolling TikTok prophecies, all bathed in the sickly glow of 1,000 phantom screens. This was humanity's secret bloodstream, the subconscious babble that shaped empires and genocides. Elara's training shattered. Neuroscience had no lexicon for the texture of shared thought. How a stranger's memory of a first kiss could taste like her own. How the collective fear of nuclear annihilation itched like ants beneath her skin. Then she heard the screaming. Tier 3 was not a place. It was an absence, a howling anti-realm where the sea's currents stilled and the dark fed. The void. Here, the last stubborn fragments of consciousness clung like lichen to a tomb. Alzheimer's patients adrift in looping childhood vignettes, comatose tech billionaires mining the sea for data, Soviet cosmonauts who'd bargained with the dark to survive a failed launch. "They're batteries," spat Felix, the vanished cab driver, now a flickering wraith with exposed brain matter pulsing like jellyfish tendrils. "The architects siphon us to stay alive. Been chewing on me since '09. He pointed to the leviathans coiled beyond the void's event horizon, things of fractal bone and neural static, their tendrils rooted into human minds like IV lines. The harvesters. Ancient? Alien? Post-human? Felix didn't know. They're why you can't remember most dreams. They take the good bits, the ideas that could have changed everything, and leave you the dregs." Elara's body, or its dream skin facsimile, convulsed. This wasn't sleep paralysis. This was systemic. The harvester's tendrils branched into every tier, a mycelial network leeching creativity, epiphanies, souls. The 1944 resonance engine experiments, her grandfather's journal, Holloway's folk tales, all failed rebellions against these cosmic parasites. And now, with her key, she'd punctured a hole they could claw through. The lab's EEG data flashed in her mind. The harvester's neural static wasn't interference. It was a language. One her own brainwaves were starting to mimic. When she fled upward, the sea fought her. Faces of the harvested peeled from the dark, begging for oblivion. A preacher from 16th century Lyon offered his teeth for a bullet. A climate scientist from 2145 hissed that the harvesters were just the middlemen. There's a deeper dark, and it's hungry. Elara surfaced gasping in her lab, her nose bleeding black oil. On her desk, the resonance engine schematics now included a bronze astrolabe labeled Somnuri Navigation Array, circa 12,000 BCE. The final sketch froze her. A human spine fused to the labyrinth, its vertebrae etched with the harvester's static. The key's teeth had grown sharper. Reality began to unravel in increments. First, the tremors. Ilara's hands shaking so violently, she duct-taped her coffee mug to the lab bench. Then the bleeding, thin rivulets of black fluid seeping from her tear ducts each time she surfaced. From the Nocturnal Sea. The woman from the subway, who called herself Lysandra, materialized in Holloway's abandoned psychiatric ward to diagnose her with a sneer. "You're a frayed wire now. Too much you in the sea, too much sea in you. Another dive, and your meat won't reintegrate." Lysandra's own body was a patchwork horror. Skin grafted from what Elara prayed were animal donors, her left pupil replaced by a whirring microcamera. "Chronos Syndicate's first prototype," she rasped, rolling up a sleeve to reveal a barcode tattoo, Project Hypnos, Subject 002. They weaponized the harvesters, fed them creatives, dissidents, volunteers, anyone whose dreams could be mined for profit. Immortality's a pyramid scheme, Doc. The Syndicate's board drinks our nightmares like fine wine. Evidence metastasized. Holloway's mayor, photographed at a gala with a telltale fractal pin on his lapel. The Syndicate's logo. Missing persons reports spiked 400%, all linked to patients at Somnus Labs, a Chronos subsidiary peddling dream optimization apps. Worst of all, the Adite bleed-through. Ilara's apartment became a haunted gallery. A child's finger painting from Tier 2 materialized on her fridge, the colors shifting to depict Lysandra's mutilation. Her grandfather's journal now contained entries she hadn't written. Day 14. They're grafting the labyrinth into my marrow, in handwriting that aged decades mid-sentence. When Lysandra led her to the Syndicate's underground facility beneath Somnus Labs, Elara vomited bile. Rows of glass pods held dreamers in forced comas, their skulls pierced by harvester tendrils feeding into a central server. A digital counter ticked above each pod. Cognitive reserves remaining, 12%. "They drain minds like juiced oranges," Lysandra muttered, smashing a pod to free a skeletal teen. The boy's eyes snapped open, irises glitching between colors. "Don't trust the key," he whispered. "It's a tracker." Ilara's body rebelled that night. Her hair whitened in clumps. Her fingernails shed, replaced by keratin shards, shaped like harvester teeth. In the mirror, her reflection lagged half a second, a glitch in the meat. Yet the Syndicate's threats paled next to the truth, Lysandra unspooled in the lab's ruins. The harvesters were mere janitors, scrubbing humanity's potential to appease the void's true masters. Chronos thinks they're partners. Lysandra laughed, a sound like broken glass. But the dark eats its pets first. The final confirmation came at 3:33 a.m. Elara woke to a harvester's tendril coiled around her wrist, its tip burrowing into her veins, solid, real, and hungry. On her nightstand, the resonance engine schematics now bore Chronos's letterhead. The void was not empty. It was the wound, a festering incision where reality had been flensed from the bone of existence. Elara plunged into its gullet, her body, or its echo, disintegrating like ash in reverse, every cell screaming. Lysandra's sacrifice bought her this, a final fraying tether to the corporeal as the harvester swarm pursued, their static shrieks shredding her resolve. "You don't save them," the cab driver had warned. "You euthanize." But the thing at the void's core was no mere parasite. It was the first dreamer, a leviathan of coiled light and screaming mouths, its form a Mobius strip of dying stars. The architects, the harvesters, the syndicate, all were its fever dreams, discarded and ravenous. "Little Key," it crooned through the voice of Elara's dead mother. "You've come to renegotiate the contract." Its true name ruptured. Her mind, Eschaton, the god that fed on possibility. Before language, before fire, humanity had worshipped it in terror, trading their collective potential for survival. "You begged us to cull your brightest thoughts," it laughed, tendrils rifling through her memories like a child gutting a doll. "How else could your ape-brain tribes endure the weight of infinity? We made you small. We made you safe." The resonance engine strapped to Elara's chest, a bastardized version of the Somnuri astrolabe, flared as Eschaton's tendrils struck. Lysandra's final gift, a feedback loop channeling the void's hunger back into itself. The trapped minds of Tier 3 surged through Elara, a tsunami of stolen epiphanies, a Neanderthal's theory of constellations, a 23rd century cure for despair, 1,000 unborn revolutions. Eschaton recoiled, its mouths vomiting black matter. "You cannot weaponize emptiness," it roared. But the Syndicate's pods had already taught Elara the truth. Hunger was the only universal language. Lysandra's scream pierced the chaos. Chronos Syndicate's CEO, a skeletal wraith sustained by Harvester Foos, had followed, his goons dragging her into the void. "You think you're the first martyr?" he spat, plunging a syringe into her neck. Her body convulsed, skin unraveling into static. "The dark always wins." Eschaton seized the offering, dissolving Lysandra into a scream that echoed across epochs, but in her final breath, she bit, sinking harvester teeth into the CEO's throat, his immortality crumbling to dust. Elara detonated the engine. The blast was soundless, painless, a flash of something, an equation, a color, a note that erased. Eschaton's hold like a wrong answer scrubbed from chalkboard. The void ruptured. The sea drained, and the last thing Elara saw before waking was Lysandra's face, whole and unafraid, mouthing two words, "Remember faster." Elara woke in a hospital bed, her skin stippled with scars that moved, tiny labyrinths slithering across her collarbone, fractal ferns unfurling along her ribs. The nurses called it a miracle she'd survived the lab explosion, the fire that erased Chronos Syndicate's files and half of Holloway's psychiatric ward. They did not mention the blackened key fused to her palm, or the way her EEG now showed. Two distinct brainwave patterns, one dormant, one awake, always. Her memories of the Nocturnal Sea were gone, surgically excised, but her body remembered. She'd wake gasping, fingers clawing at phantom tendrils, her tongue heavy with the taste of bergamot and static. Once, she tore apart her apartment searching for something she couldn't name, only to find the resonance engine schematics etched into her bathroom mirror, weeping rust-red droplets. The Syndicate's downfall made headlines, CEOs dead by sudden dementia, stock prices flatlining as comatose dreamers awoke screaming. But the public didn't see the deeper rot. Holloway's children began sleepwalking, their crayon drawings depicting a woman made of smoke and a door no one could close. A TikTok trend erupted, teens filming their void dreams, giggling as their pupils flickered harvester static. And in Elara's lab, now a crime scene, someone had spray-painted "They still hunger" beneath the carbon-dated labyrinth. She tried to forget, tried to return to sleep studies, to decaf, to the mundane liturgy of before. But her scars itched when she lied. Her reflection blinked a millisecond too slow, and the night she finally snapped, the night she carved the astrolabe's coordinates into her bedroom wall, she found Lysandra's micro-camera embedded in her left iris, its feed looping a 12-second clip of the void. "You're the thread," came a voice that wasn't hers. And the knot. The final clue arrived in a dream she could recall. Her grandfather, young and whole, pressing a bone flute into her hands. "They'll say it's sleep paralysis," he whispered, "but you'll know. You'll feel it coming." When she woke, the flute lay on her pillow, humming with the resonance engine's frequency. Outside her window, the street lamps dimmed, one by one, as if something vast were passing overhead. In the end, Elara boarded up the lab, leaving the key buried in its walls. Let the next fool find it. Let them pry it loose when the harvester's whispers grew too loud to ignore. She drove west, chasing the scent of bergamot on the wind. Somewhere, a door groaned open. Somewhere, a god yawned. And in the static between radio stations, beneath the world's feverish dreaming, the sea began to rise.